Hi everybody, Brian here. I'm here with Natalie News. She's with Canine Companions, the leading provider of service dogs in the United States. So Natalie, what can you tell us about Canine Companions?
The mission of Canine Companions is to create opportunities to gain greater independence for people with disabilities by providing highly trained service dogs free of charge.
And if someone's interested in getting a service dog or wanted to donate their time or money, how would they get in touch with Canine Companions?
They'd visit our website at canine.org, where you can find opportunities to donate, to inquire about an application for a service dog, or to learn about volunteer opportunities as well.
A worthy cause and a lovely organization. Thank you, Natalie.
There's always more to the story. Join your hosts, Dr. Eric Shaw, prosecutor Ryan Frank, writer Adrian Bonenberger, and comedian Ryan Connor as they follow up on the most recent episode of Baggage. This is Carry On.
Hey everybody, welcome to Carry On, the supplemental episode to Baggage. We got the whole gang here for this episode. And I wanted to go right into it with a follow-on from the Ukrainian episode where Ira, Adrian's wife, was nice enough to join us, which means that put Adrian on baby duty. But he's here with us for this episode. And I wanted to touch base about something that Alina had said. They mentioned it a couple of times, the Battle of Buccia. I want to ask Adrian, I want to ask you about that. What is that?
So in 2022, y'all remember the Russians came in, they invaded along three axes. They came south into Ukraine. I don't remember if it was through Belarus or not, but it was down toward Kyiv. So they were pushing on Kyiv, trying to encircle Kyiv and Kharkiv. They were pushing west against like Mariupol. And they were pushing north out of Crimea up into trying to take Kherson, Mykolaiv, and Odessa. And Butcha is a suburb to the north of Kyiv. It's a really nice suburb. To put it in New York City terms, that's like, I don't know, Scarsdale, something like that. It's sort of like Greenwich, Connecticut. You know, that's where you go if you get a little bit of money and you want to sort of drive into the city and work in Kyiv. It's a really nice upscale suburb. And so the Russians came through it, and it's one of these places where there was a battalion there. And the first couple days, people were still kind of going around in cars and bicycles, and nobody knew exactly what was going on. And as the fight got worse and the Russians got bogged down and weren't taking Kyiv, the soldiers started getting increasingly vindictive, sexual exploitation of civilians, and then just murdered. They just started murdering people. Really awful stuff. I don't know what the total number is, but in the hundreds, they massacred a bunch of folks there. That's what Butcha was. And I think there were other towns like that. Irpin is another town that's nearby. I went there in October of 2022. I wrote a piece for the Boston Globe about things that were going on in Ukraine's military and how the country was responding and bearing up. And they were still just sort of like, the place was pretty ruined and devastated and depopulated. And we've got some friends actually here. Ira has some friends up in Rhode Island that left Butcha. They were there and they had a pretty good life in Ukraine. The husband's in his late 40s, early 50s, about my age. The wife's in her, I think, early 40s. So they were late stage professionals. And the first day, I guess the fighting broke out, and they just picked everything up and they left. So they filled up suitcases and they got out. So they weren't in Butcha when the really bad stuff happened, but they were in the traffic jam that preceded the Russians' arrival. And they count themselves very lucky.
And the timeline for people, the invasion is in February. They hit, with the initial push, they end up pushing, the Russians push into Butcha. And then by March, the Ukrainians kind of push them back and discover kind of what are the atrocities. And that's what Elena was talking about. And it sounds like from what she was saying, it really motivated a hell of a lot of Ukrainians to be like, this is what Russia will do if we don't step in. And it certainly motivated her, it sounded like, to join up in March of 2022.
Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot, not just in terms of Ukraine, because of course Ukraine is Ukraine, and one thinks about Ukraine, but also in terms of America in terms of, I mean, just war in general. You went to Iraq, I went to Afghanistan. We saw the war that we saw under very different terms and very different circumstances. And I think I didn't see, I heard about it, the same things that y'all heard about, but I didn't see any, like, my unit was certainly not like going around just shooting people or hurting people or trying to like mess with them at all. Like, quite the contrary. We thought of ourselves as ambassadors as much as we were soldiers. You know, the euphemism was hearts and minds. But then I think about how war, like a real war goes, you know, like we were doing our counterinsurgency mission. And I'm not trying to say, you know, what we saw there wasn't real war. I tasted real war in Afghanistan. You get at it for like a half an hour or an hour or like half a day at a time, but not like just years on end kind of war. And one of the things that happens that I think a lot of people just don't understand is that even the Russians probably didn't understand it when they went in. You know, they went in and thinking that it was going to be candy, that they were just going to walk right into Kyiv and then the country was going to be theirs and that was going to be that. And them learning that it wasn't going to be like that, they just, and then not just that, but like actually, not only was it going to be hard, it might not work, because there was a moment in time where people were like, yeah, maybe Ukraine can actually just roll these guys up. If they'd had more help from us, they probably would have, if they had more weapons. They had the weapons they have now in 2022. They could have done it. They could have, but they didn't. And that's what takes an ill-disciplined person who goes from looting a person's apartment or looting a grocery store to feeling like they have power over the people who are still there, and then goes from feeling they have power over those people to, we're getting kicked out of here, but the Ukrainians are coming. They're going to be real angry about this stuff, and then just murdered people to try to cover it up. I think it's the worst thing a country and a people can do. That, I think, what they did. And again, it was hundreds of people that they did this to. We recorded an episode with a sheriff recently, and he was talking about the inherent goodness of people and how Russians are inherently good people. And I didn't want to disagree with him on the podcast. I don't think he's necessarily wrong. He has a greater capacity for forgiveness than I do. I'm going to go to my grave hating the Russians. When I hear that a person's Russian, I think less of them. And I know that that's not right with me. I know that's something kind of wrong with me. I can't forgive them. And I know there's a lot of Ukrainians who never will either. Can't blame them.
Can't blame them. I can't blame them. I mean, it's the horrors of war. War is not because bad things happen. It's because the unknowns. Like, you don't know how bad it can get. You can't conceive of it. I can't conceive of it. I was in Iraq in the air wing. Let's not overplay that. But like, I was in a war zone, and I have no concept of how bad total war can actually be. Some Ukrainians can. Some Russians can, right? For actually being in it. But at the same token, isn't it so much easier to label a person, a country, a nationality? They are the problem. They are the ones that did this, other than this is just the capacity of humans in the right conditions, the right training or lack thereof, that they would resort to this.
There were episodes of this that our troops did in Vietnam as well, just this kind of like retaliatory stuff. And when, you know, things got out of control and there wasn't oversight, things escalated, and you know, our people did bad things as well. So I think it is just that kind of nature of war.
Let me tell you guys a story from this would be about 2011, I guess. It was like right when, I'm trying to think, is that right when Putin took back over from Medvedev as president? It was basically right when he took back over. A friend of mine, she's a journalist now, journalism professor. Her family were Russian dissidents who came to the U.S. in '88. She got into Russia to cover something. Her parents were, or her mom or dad was deceased, but her mom was aghast that she would try to go back there. Not only were they dissidents, they're Jewish, and it's just a combination that doesn't work well in Russia. She goes under some alias to cover these, what was essentially like Putin youth camps. Are you familiar with these? So it's about was it like a 3 or 4 day thing out in the woods. And by the way, she wrote about this in one of the news magazines. I can't remember which, but
Okay, this story ends well. The way you were framing it, I thought this was going to end badly.
Well, it ends eerily. So they're out in the woods, and there's a shooting activity that she's brought to. They're teaching these boys to shoot by shooting cutouts of the leaders of all the former Soviet blocs. So that is what they're spending a week just shooting all the presidents, leaders, dissidents, and stuff like that. So it's horrifying, right? So then the last night, there's like a bonfire kind of thing, and they had some big Russian rapper. It was apparently well known, and being a Russian rapper, he's like a Christian nationalist rapper. It was very weird, and she's like, he's just saying these like crazy like anti-Semitic lyrics and anti everyone who's not a Putinist, you know. She's like, they don't know who I am, but I'm afraid. And this, by the way, she's afraid. Meanwhile, when she was like 22, she snuck into Kabul and Jesus. She covered that war and was not afraid. And she was afraid at this camp. This rapper pulls her aside at the end and takes her for a walk to talk to her. And then he goes, you know, the lyrics I'm saying, you know, it's not all, you know, it's not real to me. And don't tell anyone here, but I'm actually Jewish myself. And was like, is this guy confiding in me, or is he trying to get me to admit that I am? Right. And she just goes, oh, your secret's safe with me. And then she was like, can't wait to get the fuck out of here.
That is some that is some KGB mind trick stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just like that's the conditioning that like the people who were kids at this camp, that's who's fighting this war. These people would be like 25 now.
What do time-traveling mathematicians, ancient astronomers, and mad scientists have in common? Well, step into my laboratory at Math Science History, where time bends, ideas spark, equations echo, and the past hums with the electricity of what's to come. Hi, I'm Gabrielle Burchak, your mathematical host and curious conductor of Math Science History. Wind the clock, plug in the coils, and subscribe to Math Science History, where the past lights the way forward, one curious tale at a time.
And I hate to steal my friend's story, but it's just such a good one from med school. He was doing his trauma surgery rotation, and it was in the burn trauma center. There was like the BTU, I think it was called. Yeah, burn trauma unit. And the nurses there were notoriously salty, and they had a very specific way of doing rounds that you were supposed to go around to each patient. They would be involved with it and everything. And this guy was a older Russian man who'd grown up in Russia and moved over to the United States to practice. And he didn't want to do this. He wanted to be done with rounds as quickly as possible and just wanted to do it with the residents in the lounge there. And he starts going into it, and the students are like, or the residents are like, man, we can't do this. The nurses will kill us. Like, you have to go out there and do it. And he's like, I've been interrogated by KGB. I'm not scared of BTU nurses.
So my friend Mark, who is a highly successful comedy writer, in 2020, when you guys remember COVID? Do you remember that whole thing? So as it was approaching, he goes, "Oh, the United States is not going to handle this well. I'm going to get out." Right? He could just see it coming. So where did he go? He went to Ukraine.
What an odd choice.
Yeah. Well, he had two friends from college who lived there for like 20 years in Kyiv. And he'd heard about how great it was. And interestingly enough, he actually was in college when communism fell in the Soviet Union. He ended up doing a semester in Moscow. And he's described it as like you're on another planet. It's like they didn't have businesses. They didn't have businesses for 80 years. He was like, there were 2 restaurants in the whole city. No, it's not just that there weren't jobs. No one knew how to work, because it was like you had your assignment from the party, or you just had a stipend, you know? And it was just so dysfunctional. But anyway, he moves to Kyiv, loves it, right? He's there for a couple years before the invasion happens. And he was telling us, like, you guys got to come out. He came back and he was visiting in LA late 2021. Or what was the invasion early 2022?
It was February 24th, 2022.
Yeah. There you go. So it was like a month before that. He was visiting in LA and we're talking. He's like, you guys should visit. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm reading this stuff about, it sounds like, Russia's like,
they're not fucking
lining
around
up along the border.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, he said the people in Ukraine thought it was a bluff at the time, which I think was the case. The whole world thought it was a bluff, except the Biden administration, it seems. And so he goes back and he's like, it'll be all right. He's like, I like living there. So he stays there, and he's there through like the first couple months of everything, including like the first like attempt at taking Kyiv. He comes back to the US. He's only here for like maybe 2-3 months. And as soon as they start pushing back from Kyiv, he went back.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's like, I don't know. That's just where I want to be. I like it there. He's like, he's like, as awful as things are, he's like, we're like, everyone's just kind of like tough, and just, if I'm not bombed right now, I'm going to live my life. And it sounds like it was very intense. Like, I mean, he liked Ukraine so much that he went back. Like, you couldn't go there, but he went there through Poland.
Two little things with talking more big picture with Ukraine that have surprised me. One was just how badly the Ukrainians have embarrassed the Russians and given them a bloody nose when everyone thought they were just going to roll over, to the point where my brother-in-law, who's in the army, has talked about that. We used to think of the Russians as a peer level adversary, and they've now reduced them to near peer adversary, despite all their stuff. And that might be different now that they've had a couple years of war and got more experience. But at the end of the day, they look terrible. For all intents and purposes, they should have rolled the Ukrainians. And I don't think the Ukrainians were fully even ready. And once they got some supplies and got their shit together, like how hard they punched back was impressive.
Now with the drones, it's like, what a
it's
level
a
playing
It's a totally
field,
different.
Yeah. It's a different
What did they
war
say?
now.
3 days, 5 days? Is that how long they said they could? It would take them to take the whole country.
Right.
Oh yeah. That was little hubris there.
I mentioned this after our last episode when we were talking, that in the Bob Woodward book about the end of the Biden administration, that when in 2023 it seemed that like Russia was mobilizing tactical nukes into Belarus, and it looked like they were going to use them, and Biden called Putin and said, if you use any sort of nuclear weapon, we will destroy your entire military in, it was either 90 minutes or 9 hours. It was like, and with conventional weapons, by the way. So anyway, and then they did not use those tactical nukes, which our intel said they were about to use.
Okay.
So
oh my gosh. Yeah.
when you talk about peer and near peer, it's like, I think Russia's bluff has been called.
One thing I think about this, and we kind of touched on this a little bit with the last episode, in the more kind of realpolitik world, I find what Trump has done in the shift away from confronting Russia more to be so odd on a geopolitical scale. And the fact that it's one of those things of like, what's the Napoleon quote? Don't ever interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. Like we could turn this, and we have basically turned this into like their Vietnam. Just let them drain their blood and treasure on this, and all we have to do is send money, send bullets. And I know this again. This is nihilist and awful. Like, but the Ukrainians are willing to fight, and the Americans are willing, and the Europeans are willing to back them. Why not let the Russians just bleed themselves against them? And so, from that geopolitical standpoint, like the fact that Trump has bent over to Putin is just something that is mind-bogglingly bizarre to me. It just makes no sense from it's been 75 years almost 80 years since World War II. This has been American doctrine for 80 years.
Yeah.
And to just turn that over just makes no sense to me.
It's very silly. Yeah, I mean, from the realpolitik standpoint, I know what you mean. Of the same thing as like what we did with them in Afghanistan and what they did with us in Afghanistan
and Vietnam.
But I wish, for the sake of Ukrainians, just they are so underarmed. I wish that
we've given them just enough to not die, and I think that's such bullshit. So
I wish NATO would just say, "Hey, Ukraine, you're in."
If it were only that simple.
I know.
More to the point, they still need help. So anybody that did not listen to the episode, one of our better ones, I think, Lalika Foundation, collaborating with them. Check that out. Can you spell that? Yes, thank you. Good reminder. LELEKA.care. CARE. Lalika.care. Donate to them for medical supplies that go directly to, and according to Alina, I think the majority of their medical backpacks, tactical medical backpacks, were coming through charity through the foundation. So a worthy cause and a good place to put your money. So check that out. And I think it's going to do it for this episode. So thanks everybody, and definitely check out our next episode. It is next level. Police chief from Golden, Colorado, Chief Harvey. Amazing interview. So check that out, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Music for Baggage provided by Quincy Ledbetter. You can find his stuff at qledbetter.com. Graphics provided by Megan Weaver. You can find her at meganweaverart.com. Special thanks to our premium members for their support. You can become a premium member by clicking subscribe in your Apple Podcast app, or by visiting thebaggagepodcast.com/support to sign up or to gift a membership to someone. A percentage of all proceeds go to charity. If you have any questions, comments, or a good story to share, please email us at thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com.
Hey listeners, quick question. Do you know what extraterrestrial radio signals and a mushroom from Texas have in common? Or what a number station is and why it's so haunting and creepy? If you're intrigued by those questions, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs has the answers.
Join us, Duncan and Shane, hosts, comedians, and best friends, on hilarious deep dives into obscure facts from science, history, and pop culture.
So whether you're nocturnal or just a fan of laughing and learning, we'll keep you entertained. Find Midnight Facts for Insomniacs wherever you're listening to this show.